Hello and welcome to this Python, Django, and Plotly Express live coding session. Today we're going to be continuing with our project for Jury Life, focusing on caregiver and resident well-being in elder care facilities or communities. We're developing several data visualizations based on activities that are conducted by caregivers, such as cleaning or food preparation, as you can see here. And we're kind of looking at those activities from different angles over the course of time or as a whole, like the totals. And we're in particular looking at a chart that looks at the work percent over time, how much, what proportion of the different staff and volunteers roles are they're spending in different types of activities, different types of work activities. This is to improve staff well-being and make sure that the staff are doing work that is kind of within their domain of expertise, and also that the burden of work is not falling too much to one particular role, so we can forecast the staffing needs for the institutions. So there's an open ticket. This chart had a couple of bugs. We first had a bug where it wasn't displaying the top series data correctly. The issue was that the bar width was 1 millisecond long because of the underlying data is a date with no time, just date. And the charting library Plotly didn't really infer how wide or what the granularity of that data was. That's been fixed. We explicitly told Plotly that each datum is 1 day. And now we just need to fix a small remaining issue with the y-axis formatting here. We want these proportions to be expressed as percentages, but the raw data are numeric 0 to 1, 0 to 100%. And we'd like the labels to look like the bottom series. Now this is a bit nuanced, but I do have an answer in this upstream ticket support request. So essentially, initially, as mentioned, the top facet row didn't even display. It was displaying basically 1 pixel wide or 1 millisecond wide in this context. And it turned out after some discussion that there was an easy way to tell it that the traces should be, set the trace width basically to 1 day, which we have done. And then Nicholas Crushton, has also been really gracious and helped provide support beyond their job, so to speak, with something I probably would have eventually figured out if I would have read the documentation more closely. I'm not exactly sure, but essentially these multi-series plots have multiple y-axes. This is one and this is another, and I was under the assumption that this would be declaratively describing all y-axes, but it turns out it's only for one of the, in this case 2, but this could be this is a multi-series chart, so there could be 3, 4, and 5 different roles who are going to be doing the work here. So this could be many more times, and rather than, I don't know in advance how many there will be, how many roles there will be, because the end user can actually input this data. The roles are defined in the admin section. Caregiver roles. There's an arbitrary number of these. We don't know in advance. So there's an imperative way of defining that tick format instead of the declarative way I was hoping worked. but only worked for one y-axis. So let's go ahead and change that, and then I think we can finalize this pull request and close the upstream issue in Plotly. They've split off a couple of other issues based on the discussion here. So my support request has been resolved, and there was a genuine, you could say, a bug in a library or an edge case. So we're going to go to the work chart, because this essentially work report is part of our work app. Define it. And in the views pie, oh, actually I can clean this up now, can't I? Let me double check. So I'm feeding it with temporary data, so we're going to have a little bit of cleanup to do. A couple of bits of cleanup, but let me just get the chart to render x-axis, y-axis labels correctly. So update trace. And we'll get a closer look over here. This is a really big view function. Aside from the temporary data, it's one big prepare charts function. I'd like to maybe eventually split that out in smaller chunks, but I was not really able to kind of think of a way to refactor it right now. I'll do that in a moment. So here, actually, it's the line we want to change. It's going to basically update all of them imperatively. It's going to loop over each of those. And we refresh. There it is. Simple as that. Okay, very cool. Yeah, so we'll commit this. What I want to do is and I'll just try to do attribution. I think this is the right way to do it. Very cool. Now let's just clean it up and sync the changes. So this temporary data is no longer there, but I do have some annotated data right here that we're not using now because I wanted to provide a reproducible result. But now our chart should update with basically the same data. I just serialized that, or just created a list of dictionaries more or less by hand, but from the original data. And let's go ahead and add another report, something like April and May 1st for the nurse. Any home. Food preparation. So we'll say May 1st. So it's right in the middle of the chart. And let's say we'll go back to the report. Yes, so the nurses spend 100% of their time on May 1st. Okay. Oh, there's May 1st, 30 minutes. Very cool. We might replace this chart with one that's done through Plotly. I'm not sure if Plotly has a calendar heat map, or I guess that's what's called, a calendar heat map, like a histogram. Well, I'll have to look at that. Basically, all of these charts here are done through Plotly Express, and this originally I was going to use Apache eCharts, but it was just having weird problems. It's kind of hard to describe. I can't quite remember. It just didn't seem like a very stable developer experience for the most part. The charts weren't responsive by default. There was some other quirkiness to the library, so we switched back to using Plotly. Okay, so let's clean this up. And then the last chart on the page is that calendar heat map. Yeah. Essentially, prepared charts would have like sub-functions for each of the charts, where everything up to here is encapsulated into a function. I think I should do that as part of this pull request. It's going to be a bit verbose, but it'll save some scheming, because some of these are doing more advanced things out of necessity. That's just kind of more or less polluting this whole function. Let's just commit this cleanup. And try a quick refactor. Hey, Gaurav, sorry, welcome. And my GitHub profile is here, github.com/Briley. If you want to check it out, the project here is under Jerry Life Caregiving. And it's, so it's open source. Any ideas and pull requests are welcome. And if you're interested in getting involved in this or similar projects, I can help you out. Or if you've got a project you'd like to showcase, let me know and we can check it out on the stream. All right, so that was very cool. I'll just go ahead and close this while we're here, then I'll do the cleanup, and then we can transition over to another pull request I have in progress, yeah. Very cool. And since the other issues were created. Like a grammatical spelled right. Oh, interesting. Very cool. All right, let's just do a small refactoring after a sip of tea. So yeah, basically the idea of clean code is that you want to apply, you want to keep things organized, and each function should really have only one purpose, or like one level of abstraction. And like the movie Inception, the function can go down into deeper levels, but you shouldn't have dreams within dreams that are like all part of the same dream. They kind of should be the different dreams. So what I'm going to do is create some functions that handle all these subdreams. Yeah. Save that. There we go. So our prepare function, charts function, is going to prepare yada 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 chart. This is going to be a bit verbose, and I might need to rename some of these. They don't need to be necessarily part of the view. And this would basically take everything here. Do these one at a time. Return this. Actually, interesting. I'm using this value. I need to pass that to the context. Okay. Right. That's not a chart. Okay, I got it. That is just one value, and I think I'm using that to control the display of the charts. Oh, I could return context. I'm not sure how messy that's going to get. Even though that's the year. So that's going to essentially add these all to the context and return that. what I'm wanting to be aware of, if these values are used in subsequent functions, that would be there would be a dependency on the order that they run. It looks like that's not the case. Work by type chart. Do these one at a time, just to take a look at the front. I think this will eventually be a chart if we do it in Plotly, but handing these variables off to JavaScript. Here, where I'm handing the data into the JavaScript context and then rendering this calendar. And nice thing, so this is done with Apache eCharts, which is a good library, but it just I'm not confident in moving the project over to it. Documentation also is a little bit challenging, spotty. Can't remember all the concerns I had, but and just having to write a lot of JavaScript. So the cool thing about Plotly Express is we're just going to write Python pretty much, and it's going to render out all the charts. So this is how we're preparing the work by type chart right here, just straight Python. No JavaScript is necessary, which this is mostly declarative chart configuration, but I've got to pass in these values, parsing it, and just a little bit of disconnect. I'd rather keep things more pure Python. So that's that. But let's see. So the first one did work. The charts rendering, it's got all the context, the data, so we can move to the next chart safely, and I'll just do these all as one commit. So essentially we're going to bring this chart through. Take that. I need to define that. Now it's a little bit different. I'm trying to be consistent here. I'm just thinking about consistency. Here I'm naming the context key. This is a dictionary, context dictionary. This one I'm mutating it inside the function, so I don't see kind of what's going on. I just know that some stuff happened. Here I'm explicitly mutating it, and this gives me a little more clarity because this ties directly to the template. I do need to create corresponding DOM, not DOM, but more or less the charts template does call for these HTML here, so I've got to be able to track those. And it probably is nicer to not have to dig into each function to get the name of the context variable. This one's a little bit of a different case. So I'll introduce some inconsistency here so that I can because this will be refactored, the consistent way I'll do it will be to have these context variables declared here. That way, if I need to change the wiring real quick, I can just do it at one level of abstraction, which is essentially this is preparing charts and adding them to the template context. So that's an appropriate, because that's an appropriate level of code here, where we're defining the key. This is literally going into the context. So that's just my thought process here. Let's say we do need to put this in and dedent that. So then I will do this. I mean, either way is fine. Return is fine. Well, I don't like to have too much after the return statement, even though it's just one statement. So oops, chart. So yeah, it's essentially going to prepare the data, prepare the chart, and return it. Now, granted, this is abstracting. Well, I think it's the right level of abstraction. We're calling this two, more or less three methods to prepare this chart. We've got to get the data and tell the chart what to render where and what the label should be. So, all right, I believe that should work. And then we're returning the actual chart, so that makes sense to prepare the chart. That's what the function says it's doing, and that's what we're getting back. And then we're, preparing the charts. So we're doing all of them and adding them to the context. I think it's this right level of abstraction. Just kind of thinking aloud here. There's no like right or fully wrong way. It's not absolute. The idea here is just to kind of give myself less to think about and the opportunity to dig deeper when I need. Okay, so now we're going to continue here. Same pattern. Long function name. And actually, now that I think about it, we don't need to pass the context because we've abstracted it. I think this is a nicer way of organizing it. We're not muting the context, we're preparing a chart, return the chart. So this is now serving a function. It's agnostic of what's going on here. All it knows is it's preparing a chart. Not for what or where it'll be used. Yeah. Cool. Slow it down. Yep. We'll create. And there's going to be a really long function here. I'm going to change the name of the context variable and everything. Doesn't take any arguments. Doesn't need any arguments. Everything stands alone. So standing in just a moment it will be. Yeah, and then these functions could be moved to another library, like charts.py or something like that, keeping our view code more succinct. Things like this could be, it's like a utility function, and this can be moved to queries.py or something like that. More or less, it's preparing the data. Different ways of organizing this. We don't have this really. It's getting longer and longer. So that seemed to work. Now we got, that was one of these down here. Yeah. So this is a little bit. This is the big one. Slightly. Slightly shorter and still explicit. And we need to go to our template and use that. Right here. Changing our wiring. See, that's kind of case in point. I've got this template and the view. I'm just having to change the wiring at one level of abstraction in the view. And the rest of this is not really so much on my mind at this point because I don't need to double check how the chart was prepared and more or less updated and stuff like that. But what I need to do then is actually let's take this. It's long. It's encapsulating a lot. Oh, wait a minute. Well, what did I do wrong here? Yeah, so we've got the function. Okay, so these are separate functions. Right here, this is what I need. And this one's a little different because I needed to act on it a few times. I needed to create the chart and then apply some more imperative logic to format the y-axis, remove faceted prefix, just some stuff that a little bit of polish to finish this chart off. So it's not just getting the data, preparing the chart in this case. That's hence the abstraction. Making this function prepare charts more clear. See, now we're just basically modifying the context. And we should still have the same number of charts and no yellow screen. Looking good. Alright. I'm going to rename this as well. Maybe for consistency. We all run the query twice. That's nice. So I could either run the query twice, each function, or pass it, or encapsulate these into one function and passing the context, or grab the data in the parent function and pass it into here. Or another way would be, there might be a way in Plotly to specify, since we're using the same data, to create two like series plots. None of them are, each has trade-offs. That would be probably the ideal one. But or I could maybe figure out how to like, what do you call it, tokenize this? I don't know. Get some data apparently. It's a little bit messy, inconsistent. These two charts are using the same data. So the context approach, where we pass the context and mutate it into each of these functions and then get context back, would be the cleanest, because that would allow me to abstract these a little bit better. This is a step in the right direction. Let me just continue this path and I can change that down the road. And essentially, I'm not sure that would be any better, because I would still need to prepare this data outside of the function. So it's trade-offs, it's a bit of trade-offs. We're using the same data, we're just that also makes it a little bit more opaque, where I could compare them side by side. Or wait. See, now I'm confusing myself. Yeah, it's the same data. One has the total and one has the percent. So two sides. Minutes. Here we are. Percent and total, same data. So I'll probably just live with it. It's not ideal, but it's definitely an improvement. So here, one, I'm modifying the context, returning the inside the function, returning the context. For these three, I'm specifying the context. And of course here I'm modifying the context directly. So I'm going to do that inside another layer of abstraction. Adding context variables is typically done even right in the view. And get context data, I was just doing so many context manipulations that I put that into another function. It's probably an obvious way to have this, to harmonize this without needing to run that query twice. Separating the charts, the preparation, the data preparation is one. Actually, yeah. But I don't want to run it. It is already separated out. I don't want to run it twice. I don't know how heavy it'll be. I mean, it's just that's not the right button thing. Yeah, and it's a couple CTEs and aggregation partition. So it's non-trivial. It's probably good that this only runs once. Well, okay. Let's not let perfect be the enemy of good, as the saying goes. This is already nice, and I'll just live with some inconsistency there. Let's see, make sure everything is working as expected. I believe it is. And I can come back and clear this up a little bit on a clearer mind of things. All the charts are rendering. There we go. So it's pretty significant. Went from a big monolithic function down to a much more succinct and relatively consistent. We're manipulating context. Only in one case are we. Aggregating some data, preparing data in this prepared charts. So can you tokenize that query? Is that even the right word? I don't think so. Too complicated. Memoize. I don't want to add another library. Well, on a simple level, the work by caregiver role and type choice. Work by caregiver role and type choice. Not so bad. And then for consistency, it becomes obvious. Well, we have 2 out of 3 are just taking context and returning it. So they are context aware, so to speak. And these are context agnostic. And it's not that they need to be context aware, it's that there's shared state. Shared, yeah, I'm not sure. These are sharing data. And this is yeah. These are working on the same. So this is context aware. Needs to be. Yeah, well, I'm on the fence. I think as long as they're working right now, I'll disentangle it later if it becomes a problem or it's confusing. A little bit of it doesn't have to be perfect. Hey, there we go. So, broke something. I think that's not returning anything, so no. So that's a bit dangerous too. Well, if anyone's watching this and has some suggestions on how I could harmonize these, or based on the trade-offs, I'm pretty sure this query for the data, the aggregation query with the common table expressions, heavy enough. I only want to run it once. Any of these aggregate or analytical queries should be even cached. Well, that would actually be better if I would cache it at a different layer, the database layer, but that's a whole nother level of complexity. It's another option noise. You don't have to aggregate it out of the request. At the time of request, it's done on a timer, on a schedule, hourly or something, or daily, or on a hook when the data change. I could hook, but that could also, there's just trade-offs. There's many different options here in solutions, apparently, as I guess is common when we're programming. So lots of considerations. Now we should have our context back. The chart should render, and you see this is the one that renders in the JavaScript. So we've got the data into the client from the response, but then the chart needs to render as a secondary thing, whereas these others are essentially rendered on the server. Server-side rendered because we're preparing the HTML from the Plotly Express chart, Python chart instances. It's pretty cool. Server-side rendering for the win. Yes, this whole Django framework is essentially server-side rendered. All right. And then there's some JavaScript wiring that's done inside of here, I guess. I don't know. It's magic to me. You can dig into it, right? I think you can, no, it doesn't. I can't jump to the declaration because this is an instance. Anyway, of px bar, but I can jump here, find it if I need, but right now I just want to finish this. So all of our charts are there. I'm satisfied with the outcome. These are essentially tied to the view, but I think that's pretty much the way they are because they're rendering HTML, and that's what the view does. So some of them have the view context. The thing is, they're not agnostic in a way that I could use them in a different view, probably, which might be more ideal as we start developing individual home pages, for example. Then we're going to want to have a different query that feeds the same chart, more or less, with the same labels and everything. I think that'll be an opportunity to reassess this whole situation, but in the meantime, this is a pretty good step in the direction. And I don't think I've kind of painted myself into any corners here with this. I can reevaluate some of the decisions as new information arrives and as the project grows. Cool. So let's go ahead and commit this. I think it did increase the readability or maintainability. Following a little bit of the clean code guidelines, but introducing some inconsistency into the project. So our changes now should be here. There we go. I believe I can take this out of draft state and merge it. Very cool. Okay, so that was about 1 hour. It took to 5 minutes to do the fix, a little bit of introduction time, and then 45 minutes for the refactor. I don't know how the work breakdown was, but anyway, it's a good session. So yes, you can check this project out. github.com/jerrylife/caregiving. This is pull request 10, where we've introduced a couple of charts. One particular chart and debugged it, and in upcoming sessions we'll be doing a little bit more with the data visualization, but primarily moving over to introducing some features into the Django app from our first generation end-to-end or full stack JavaScript application. So if you got any questions or comments, do feel free to post them below the video. I'm always eager for feedback, and if you're interested in joining this project or similar ones, you can stop by GitHub here and open any issues for ideas, or check out the code, try it on your own. I appreciate